All right, free radicals, welcome back. My name is Dave, and this is the Radical Independent. I am back. I had gone to Walmart. Armageddon. Armageddon out there, folks. There are empty shelves in Walmart. This isn't a hurricane. I've been through hurricanes. I've seen this stuff, and this is weird because it's going to be every day. Eventually, the hurricane hits you. You might lose your power and water and so forth. And there's a recovery period. But this is like every day. And our government is completely flat-footed and not prepared for this stuff. See, we need to be ready for enemies both foreign and domestic. And right now, the enemy is a virus. It's a war against a virus. And I know that language, the war language, doesn't trouble me in this case. I want to go to war against the virus, and I want to win. With Donald Trump as president, that's going to be a rough go. Tulsi Gabbard. I want to talk about Tulsi Gabbard and this idea that Tulsi Gabbard is a progressive when I don't think she is. And I don't... Look, it's about parsing language, and is that useful right now, Dave? And who cares? Well, here's the usefulness of it. She's not AOC. She's not Tlaib or Omar. She's not a member of the squad. She's been there too long, and she's different. She wants to get along with people on the other side of the aisle. She wants to work with people to get things done. Notice how all of a sudden, in a crisis, you got people like Mitt Romney out there proposing things that you probably never thought you'd hear out of his, although maybe Mitt Romney might be the only one. I don't know. But it's just that all of a sudden we'll get stuff passed that we couldn't before because we're in a crisis. This is how our government is so dysfunctional. That we spent 4 years, and again, I'm no fan of Trump right now. He's not instilling any confidence in anything. But we've spent 4 years bashing Trump. We could have been working on the healthcare system. We could have been preparing for a number of different things. This is something that nobody probably could have forecasted, except some weird psychic from 2009, apparently, who probably just got lucky in a book somewhere. That's what I've been hearing. But this idea, you're on Twitter and you're like, I wish people would see how progressive Tulsi Gabbard is. Well, yeah, progressive in the old sense of the word. Like progressive. Not this lefty kind of jargon, this woke identity stuff that gets... Like AOC is all about the woke identity stuff. That's not progressive. That's regressive. How is that progressive? To worry about marginalized groups that you literally create, rather than you got a whole bunch of marginalized groups that exist and they're very large constituencies. You don't need to create any new ones. You don't need to make people feel bad if they don't kind of, I don't know, sign on to some of this weird... I'm just going to say it's weird stuff. Some of it's very bizarre. And I'm not going to go into specifics, but when I look at it, I go, I don't know anybody like that. Maybe you do. And I'm not saying that we should marginalize any one person, but you're spending a lot of time, you're wasting political capital. Tulsi Gabbard looks at all people the same way. And it's kind of a conservative talking point, but people don't like it. I think everyone needs to be treated with dignity, no matter who they are. If you're black, you're white, none of this stuff matters. It's all, you're a functioning human being standing above ground. You should be treated very equally. Doesn't matter any of these characteristics. But the more we highlight the characteristics, the more I think we divide people over them. All right, so that was a tangent, but I want to talk more specifically about this idea that Tulsi Gabbard isn't in a category. She's not in a category. This is what makes her better than Bernie Sanders. Bernie is in a category. For a number of years now, Bernie has been sort of the standard bearer of the so-called progressive movement. He's inspired a lot of people to run for Congress. And quite honestly, I would say he was inspirational, but long term this isn't gonna work. You need somebody who has appeal pretty much across the spectrum. Now, like, for instance, this show The Hill, which I've been ticked off lately because Crystal is just so in the tank for Bernie. It's like, he's losing, Crystal. He's losing. Get over it. Go interview Howie Hawkins or something. Seriously, go find somebody who actually means what they say. If you're into the Bernie agenda, go find a Green Party candidate that you can help. Lisa Savage up in Maine needs your help. She's on the ballot. They got the signatures, so she's on the ballot up there. At this point, talking about, Bernie bros and what happened, and it's just, anyway, the whole premise of The Hill is you've got this guy, Sagar, who's kind of like populist right. And then you got Crystal, who's supposedly populist left. Nixon and Stranahan, too, if you've ever listened to that show. Those guys, kind of the same MO. I would say the conversation, though, with Nixon and Stranahan might be a little more mature than the other conversations, but Crystal is pretty sharp. She has a mind, and when like a steel trap, and when she starts to pontificate about all of these different political things that are happening, you can certainly see why she'd be somebody you'd want to have on your side, promoting you. But there's too much of this other stuff that gets interwoven into these definitions that people create. And if you're a progressive, then you're this. If you're a populist, you're this. And what this is, by the way, would be, the word populism is much more user-friendly. And nobody will touch it because Trump, he didn't co-opt it, but people said, oh, he's like a populist. Are you a populist? What's wrong with being a populist? I mean, he's a populist to the right. He caters to the people who feel marginalized and left out. That whole term forgotten man, that came about because of Donald Trump. The sad thing when people start to put Tulsi Gabbard into these boxes, the thing that I see all the time with Tulsi, is that the people who are in various groups tend to embrace her and then call her what they are, rather than just referring to her as open-minded, independent, compassionate, fierce, all of these different qualities and characteristics. I mean, you could go down a list of adjectives. Tough, empathetic, and sharp, incredibly sharp. During this whole crisis that we're now in, again, I go to the Walmart and shelves are bare. And what's the contingency plan? How is food going to continue to move around? Are food producers, are those people going to be able to continue working? I mean, all of these questions that aren't answered, and you just sit there and you go, I want a president that instills confidence in not just markets, but in my own personal life. And Trump ain't doing it. Biden, I don't know if he can get through sentences. I don't know. That's somebody who's feeble and not at 100%. Bernie will talk about Medicare for all. Why am I laughing? Why is that funny? Because in the midst of a chaos that's here now, Bernie, Medicare for all is not going to save us. And if you want to say, well, we should have had it in place, we don't. We don't have it in place. So you have to use logic and reasoning that we don't have it yet. So why bring it up? Just say, we need an emergency Medicare for all. I mean, UBI is way better because people can spend it on what they need. If they're not sick, they can buy food. If whatever it is that their crisis is, this gives people the freedom to do what they want. And that's why you get this idea that Bernie might be a bit of an authoritarian. I mean, don't talk about Castro if you don't need to talk about him. Don't talk about any dictator in a positive light. I mean, look, we already know that, Tulsi Gabbard gets accused of liking dictators just because she talks to them. All right? Just, oh, you're an Assad toady. You can't, and she's condemned Assad like 100 times, but it doesn't matter. She had a conversation, so they say, well, that proves that she's just, a sympathizer, and so forth. This also proves that Tulsi Gabbard doesn't give a crap about what you think. She doesn't. She's truly trying to represent the country in a way that would help the citizens. She believes in world cooperation, especially in a time like right now, rather than 800 military bases. You could kind of pare that number back, bring some of these resources back to the homeland, and really prepare for war against a virus. It is a war. And this is one time where I think you'd get unanimous consent from the American people that they want you to go to war against the virus and take any precaution, and do it by any means necessary. Now, there are a lot of people that are going to say, okay, then I'm going to lose all my civil liberties. This is different than just trading security. We're fighting for people's lives. We're fighting. So it would take some sacrifice and cooperation. I guess to make the folks who are worried about civil liberties a little happier, you have to put expiration dates on these things, because we're going to end up with the Patriot Act times 100, and it'll never go away. And those assurances have to be brought forward. But again, when you're being tortured by the media daily, by looking at shelves at Walmart, and I use torture, it's kind of maybe hyperbole, but when you see all this stuff out there and you think to yourself, how are we going to do this? And we need a fix quick. We need this stuff to go away. I want people to do what they're supposed to do. That means self-quarantine. That means sacrificing your lifestyle to some degree so other people can exist. If you can't do that, then we don't really live in a civil society. We live in constant anarchy. And we're so self-absorbed. Again, this is different from Tulsi Gabbard, who says service before self. She's the antithesis of all of what's happening. Grab as much toilet paper as you can, even though you don't need that much, right? Tulsi Gabbard would say, whoa, what about these other people in line? They need some. They don't have any. You're just going to clear the shelf out? And then, charge, $5 a roll or something when people find out that you have it and you don't need it all. We're in a tough spot. And a tough spot demands real leadership. And I tell you what, doesn't matter what the label is. Doesn't matter. I would want to see somebody who can step up, instill confidence, and have an action plan. Tulsi Gabbard has all of those things. She is all of those things. I know you're just people who are watching me and thinking, she can't win. She could win, though. She could. This isn't over. We're in the midst of a pandemic, and someone somewhere is going to snap and say, you know what, we need to start listening to this woman. Someone higher profile within the DNC establishment is just going to say, at this stage, it's kind of nice to hear a voice like Tulsi rather than Bernie, who's just mumbling at this point, and Biden, who's trying to construct sentences and failing from time to time. We need somebody who's coherent, who instills confidence. Trump, obviously, we're seeing the wreckage of electing somebody who has no people skills. He does not have any people skills. He does not know how to empathize with people. He knows how to roll people and persuade people and arm twist, but he has no clue about dealing on a human level. For some reason, for Trump, it's all been a game since he's been a little kid. And, he's wanted to be king. Now he's king. And the king doesn't know how to, relate to his subjects. And it's kind of sad. And in a time like this, you need, whether you liked Bill Clinton or not, and again, Clinton you can blame for 1,000 things, or Obama, both of those guys, and Reagan too, could look at the camera and instill a measure of confidence. And I'm just crossing party lines. I'm looking at Reagan and Obama and Clinton. And we need some of that stuff, even though you would say, well, they're just politicians being fake and so forth. We need someone who has the skill set to actually bring people together and to instill confidence and to make people feel like it's really going to be okay. And Donald Trump is not that person. I don't think Bernie Sanders is that person. I don't think Joe Biden, if he was functional, like if it were 20 years ago, when he was trying to cut Social Security, whatever. It's just that whole argument is in the 90s, Bernie. It was in the 90s, but, I'm not trying to stick up for Biden. Anyway, if we had that older version of Joe Biden where he was coherent, he might be able to bring the country together to some degree, but you have to be able to complete sentences, and you have a thought, and that thought takes you somewhere. You have to go where that thought is taking you. I don't think Joe Biden is capable of doing that right now. Although some people will say, well, he's going to be better than Trump, and they might have a point. And in a crisis, Americans want to hear it's going to be okay. Tulsi Gabbard would be 100 times better than Joe Biden in that regard, and really better than most people on the political scene. I don't know who else has all of these characteristics. This is why I was drawn to Tulsi at the very beginning of this race. And she had the policies, but she also had the ability to communicate and relate. All of these things. Hugging veterans in the front row who had served the country, not just talking to them. And this is, by the way, this is before all the personal distancing. I wouldn't recommend that now, Tulsi, but Tulsi might do it anyway. Say, screw it. I went to Iraq. I went to combat. I can do this, because that's the kind of person she is. She'd put her own life on the line for you and me. And that's the difference between her and these other candidates. She's about service before self. Are all these things progressive? Some of them defy any sort of ideological definition. Most of them are just common sense things. And it's the best of, it's got a little bit of the right, some libertarianism, some greenism, some just what people might consider progressivism. Again, I'm not sure what that is anymore. And it's all mixed together. And so it's hard to put a label on it. So when you label Tulsi Gabbard, be wary that someone might come up behind you and say, I don't think she's that. She's different. I think you just call her Tulsi, and she's an independent. She's got her own brain, and she thinks for herself. And yes, some of these ideas land, if you're going to throw a dart, they're going to land in the progressive circle of things, if that's the way you have to categorize it. And if that makes you feel better, and that's important to you, hold on to it. But for me, I think it's a stumbling block for the rest of the country. And that's why I did this video. All right, so I'm done. I had a donation yesterday. I want to thank anybody who's still donating to this channel in the midst of this crisis and this situation. The way the money's going, money might end up being very worthless. Because if you're just pumping money into a system, you're devaluing the currency, and people are going to want more of that money to pay for whatever it is they're selling. It's just a hard economic fact, but I appreciate that. If you just watch the videos and subscribe to the channel, that is pretty good these days. Channel has made a bit of a comeback from its low point, which was about a month and a half ago. So I appreciate those who've either come back or come over for the first time. Again, I'm a fervent Tulsi Gabbard supporter. Honestly, if it's not Tulsi, at the end of the day, it's green or libertarian, and I will go there. But for now, until the very end of everything, it's Tulsi Gabbard. And if she wants to get out of the race, I'll let her decide what she wants to do. But my inclinations now, I think we need to have her stay in, especially with the chaos and the crisis going on. We need a voice out there who speaks truth and speaks in a way that people will listen to and respond to. And there's nobody else on the political scene who's doing that. That is why she needs to stay. And there are more reasons, but people say, well, in case something happens to Bernie or Biden or whatever. No, that's not my number one issue as to why Tulsi needs to stay in. It's that there's nobody else in the political scene who's currently running for president who has these set of values, who can articulate them, and who also can make them accessible to people both on the left and the right. Okay. I think I've done a great job explaining that. So I am done. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you very soon.